Hi, this is Matt with Huge Movie Fanatics here, and Nate, who is the owner of Huge Movie Fanatics.
Former Huge Movie Fanatics,
Yes.
I mean, I guess kind of back.
Yeah.
Current Huge Movie Fanatics, and you're also, we may as well mention it on all the videos, hell with it. You're currently...
I am
for, like,
State of Flux. State of Flux is my YouTube channel.
State of Flex, so you can go see what the hell he does on his own and see what I do on my own here.
Yep.
And then sometimes, every 8 years or so, we come together and...
Hopefully it won't be that long.
Yeah, maybe try it again this year. What do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. But we're here to talk to you about Scream 6. Now, this one has one element that bothers me about it. You were going to say something.
Yeah, hold that thought. What I do think is cool about this is the way they put the 6 into the M, and it occurred to me they could have done that with
5?
With 5.
Yeah. I think that was the one thing that I was going to say that kind of bugs me.
Okay.
In that Scream 1, Scream 2 is a 2, Scream 3 is a 3, Scream 4 is the 4 that turns into an A. So they didn't want to have their movie called 5 Cream, is essentially why Scream 5 is not called 5 Cream.
Yeah.
And you can't really do that with the 6 unless you turn the E upside down or something like that. So they did the Roman numeral, but now you have a franchise that was all numeric that suddenly turns to Roman numeral.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. That's annoying.
And it is kind of a little weird. But anyway, Scream 6 is the next movie we're going to talk about. And I like this movie. I want to preface, because you're going to hear a whole lot of hot damn criticisms coming out of me. So I want to preface by saying I like Scream 6. I think Scream is the only franchise to this day with 0 bad entries in it. I think it is the best horror franchise in that there are definitely worse movies, and I would argue Scream 6 is the worst of the Scream movies.
We agree on that.
But even as that being the case, it's not a bad movie. The biggest problem that this movie does, and they do it in a line of dialogue early on in the movie, is it fucks the movies. Who gives a fuck about movies, I think was the line.
Oh, really? Who the hell says that? We've both seen it just once.
The killer.
He's super memory.
After the killer in the second opening scene kills the killer, he says, "Who gives a fuck about movies anyway?" And then does the final kill.
Not exactly in spirit of the franchise.
That's the thing. And so it tries to do this thing where it's trying to focus on character rather than being a contemporary criticism of film. But that's what your franchise is being a contemporary commentary on film. So the film tries to do that by having it be a little bit about dispirited franchise filmmaking, and also about the culture of documentary filmmaking, documentary true crime, and how rumors spiral out of that, and how we become our own detectives and that kind of thing, which is elements within the movie. But this is most similar to Scream 3 in the sense that Scream 3 is kind of thoughtless, as this movie is, where it doesn't have anything meaningful to say about what it is kind of deconstructing. It is just acknowledging that, much like Scream 3, trilogies are a thing, and these are some things that happen in a trilogy, but it doesn't ever dive deeper.
Surface level.
Absolutely surface level, and this is also absolutely surface level about franchise filmmaking. But the thing is that Randy addressed franchise filmmaking in Scream 2 very briefly, where he's like, if your franchise, or if your sequel is to become a franchise, you need to follow certain sequel rules and stuff like that. And so he already kind of touched on that. So it really doesn't offer much nuance or anything really new to say. The only part that felt truly Scream-like to me is this film has a post-credit scene. Did you see the post-credit scene?
I probably didn't.
The post-credit scene is just Mindy talking at the camera, basically saying, "Not every movie needs a post-credit scene," and then it's out. And
who's Mindy?
She's the Randy character. So that felt the most Scream thing.
And it's it's not even in the movie.
No, but also post-credit scenes are incredibly numerous now, which they
Well,
weren't
right.
back in the day.
She say it like to the camera?
Not necessarily. She said it like to people, but the camera was in front of where the people were.
Okay,
kind of
so
thing.
there's people she's talking to?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got
Yeah.
it.
So it's just this fun little Easter egg,
Oh,
essentially. But that's also the most Scream-esque part of the movie. I will say I liked the opening scene. I think the conversation
Correct. I thought, go ahead. I'll briefly say yes, I agree. The opening scene I thought was really interesting. And it was like, holy crap, we've never, because this movie was billed as like, oh, big, for the first time in New York, it only took 6 movies for Ghostface to get to New York versus 8 for Jason. But I agree. I think this movie's probably best part, or the strongest part, is the opening scene, and then the like, holy crap, like seeing the Ghostface take off the mask.
Yeah.
Then you're like, holy crap, what's going on here? And what ends up happening with that, I thought was cool.
Yeah, and I will say that's really strong. I think the opening scene is pretty strong. I like
So this is the one where he's just like
he's talking
normal
with a human voice, and then it clicks into the
I
ghost
love
face.
that.
Yeah, when they're having a conversation about the hollowness of essentially the Scream franchise. So that worked for me. I love Samara Weaving. I think she's a fantastic
Is that
actress.
the
She's
chick
the
at the beginning?
yeah.
Okay.
She's a fantastic actress, and I thought she was perfect for this opening scene. Traditionally, she's more of your hero character. She was in Ready or Not. She was in The Babysitter, which is a Mick G kind of weird action slasher on Netflix. But she's a talented actress, and it was kind of neat seeing her in more of a victim role, or exclusively a victim role in this. But I assumed she was gonna die. I was stunned when the killer revealed himself, and I was like, "Are we gonna get like a Ghostface cult here, where they're gonna be kind of like a network of Ghostface all around?" Because they've hinted at that ever since Scream 2.
Oh, really?
Like Nancy Loomis finds Billy's mother finds Mickey through the Psycho website in the classifieds.
Oh, that's right. So it was
like,
hinted at a little bit.
It's hinted at.
And you were always wondering if they were gonna.
And in Scream 5, the two people have come together via the internet.
Oh,
so
that's true.
I was like, oh, are we finally gonna do this? Are we gonna get like a mastermind Ghostface? So we'll have to figure out who that is. Like somebody is gonna be the mastermind, and then we're just gonna get Ghostface, meaningless Ghostface reveals throughout the entire movie as ghost faces are killing people randomly.
Okay, so that probably would have been a lot cooler than what they did.
It's a much better movie. Instead, they go from the scene where he, Flash Thompson from the Spider-Man movies, takes off his mask, and then he goes back to his apartment, and then they recreate the opening of Friday the 13th Part 2, which I think is one of the most egregious, well, again, we're going to differ here. Friday the 13th, I think, is one of the most egregious uses of franchise filmmaking. So it makes sense that he is going to, or this movie's going to lean into that. And they even watched Jason Takes Manhattan in that scene, right?
Because it's the New York Scream.
Yeah. And then they have the killer in the fridge, and they fridge the killer right in the beginning of the movie, which is kind of neat. But then they do away with the whole concept of the franchise in an effort to tell this murder mystery that is so obvious who the killer is. Like, I figured it out in the trailer. And I remember the day that the trailer, not the first trailer, like there was the cool Subway trailer that you saw. The first trailer that showed you what the concept of the actual movie was going to be. I watched it at work with one of my other managers, and I was like,
He works at a theater.
I work at a theater. And I was like, well, he's the killer. And and my friend was like, why do you say that? And I was like, he's a cop that's going to have access to all these pieces of classified information. And you see Ghostface with a gun, like, he's tactically going to be able to know how to use this stuff. I'm like, he's the killer. And so, after that dude watched the movie, he's like, wow, you got it in one without even seeing the movie. I do think that and Dermot Mulroney gives a good performance and whatnot, but it was just too on the nose. And then this movie does something that they've hinted at potentially doing in the past. There's I don't know if you've ever read the alternate Scream 2 screenplay. There's 3 killers in that.
Oh, damn.
like Mrs. Loomis is always the killer, but then it wasn't Mickey, it was Derek and Hallie. Were the other two, Sid's roommate and Sid's boyfriend. But it turns out that was a fake script. They just released it out there. So it's been hinted at for years, and I figured that this one was I figured out that the movie was either going to go the route of Scream 3 or Scream 1, where they're going to fake the killer's death so that you can have somebody killed off at some point in the movie who's going to ultimately be the killer, which turns out to happen. I was like, or it's going to be the guy that is in so few scenes, but he's just recognizable enough that it's obviously him because he's never around when the killer's around, and it's also him. So they did the whole 3 thing, and I assumed he was involved, and that's when I started thinking, and I was like, I wonder if I figured out who the killers were, and that was one of the most dispiriting things.
First time in a Scream film?
No, I figured it out in Scream 5
I mean,
as well.
for just watching the trailer, I mean.
I didn't figure that part out. I figured out who the main killer was. The Dermot Mulroney was. I figured that out from the trailer. Yes, that's the first time I figured that out. But while I was watching the movie, I figured out who the other 2 were. And
if you ever need a private dick, contact him at State of Flux.
Well, also, like, very briefly, if you go through, there's no reason to have 3 killers. It becomes insanely hard when you have 3 killers, because this movie, as violent and vicious as it is weirdly toothless, because nobody dies. You have the opening girl who's killed by Flash Thompson from Spider-Man, and he's killed by Dermot Mulroney. Mulroney takes ownership over killing that guy. You have the dude in the fridge, you don't know who kills him. But then the next person you see get killed is Sam's therapist, who presumably got killed by Dermot Mulroney in acquiring information on Sam or whatever. And then you have the girl in the apartment who dies, that is killed by the same person who kills everybody in the convenience store, which is clearly Dermot Mulroney. So what the fuck are the other characters doing? Like, Quinn, the redheaded girl who's the killer, she attacks Gale. She talks about how she attacks Gale. The other dude, shy of maybe he's the one that killed the dude in the fridge, does nothing in the entire movie because he's with Mindy the whole time. Like, maybe he's the good guy on the phone, but there's no reason to have 3 killers in this movie other than the surprise factor.
Yeah, well, that's probably why they did it. One thing I wanted to mention, for the very first time since the first 2 films, this is the first time in the whole franchise where a film has come out and then a year later a sequel had come out, which is kind of interesting. Unfortunately, not with the success of the first 2 films, because in my opinion this is not so great or anywhere near as good as the second film, but I thought it was interesting. Like, those, it was like the good old days of the 80s where, Jesus, a sequel comes out the year after. Yeah. That was like, that's really unheard of these days. I
agree. I was surprised by that. The other thing I was going to just mention is that this movie's toothless in the sense that no character dies. It's Mindy's girlfriend is the only character that gets killed that has a name, I guess, besides the therapist.
So then the people who are dying are just...
It's
random?
Gale's boyfriend, who's just a random nameless guy, and then the people in the, like, Pagoda, the convenience store, that get killed. And that's it. And that comes back to, like, another problem is, the reason this rings hollow is that Scream is a character-driven franchise, and so when people die, it has some kind of meaning. Either it eliminates a suspect, or it's somebody you kind of care about. And this, you don't care about anybody that dies because most of them don't even have names.
Boyfriend.
Yeah, exactly.
No boyfriend.
Like, not Dewey, and like, is one of the more meaningful deaths. And that the guy who's like, when the girls run into the convenience store and the guy goes up and goes face to face and is like, "You got a problem, pal?" You're like, well, I guess I kind of cared about him because he was trying to help. But like, everybody else, it's just like, it's just random people that die.
Do they do this fake thing where it looks like Gale's gonna die in this one, I think?
Yeah, it looks like she's gonna die and then she doesn't. And that's the other thing is it kills everybody, but nobody dies because Mindy gets stabbed to death, but she doesn't. She survives. Chad gets stabbed horrifically, just repeatedly stabbed to death, and then he also doesn't die. They even recycle the same bit of dialogue from Scream 2 which was, we got a live one here, and then pull him back. I was fine with that. I thought his character in this one specifically was fantastic. Like, I liked him in the first one, but in this one, he and Jenna Ortega's Tara, I think, are a great pairing. And then Gale gets killed, but then doesn't. For everybody talking about how much great mayhem is in here, the set pieces are good. I really like that convenience store scene.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I like the scene where he's tracking them through the apartment studio or whatever, and then they have to use the ladder to get across.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, that's a great set piece. Gale's scene is great.
Yeah. I thought, in my opinion, let's see what you think about the subway scene not really living up to maybe what we might have thought it would have been based on the trailers.
Yes and no. I really like the subway scene. I think that is also one of the stronger elements of the movie.
Fine.
But
That's good.
but I also think that the tension that is ramped up there could have been more successful. So I don't know necessarily how. If you'd done like the multiple ghost face like thing, which I mean, yes, there are 3 ghost faces, but done the like ghost face cult thing and had everybody on that train or something like that be somehow involved, or not everybody, but a lot of people, that might have made it more tense, and you'd have to figure out which one is a ghost face, and maybe you have some of them aren't in ghost face costumes, and that could have been something interesting and very Scream yet unscream and stuff like that.
So how many characters you think look like they're gonna die? No, 3?
It's at least 3, if not 4, because at one point...
That's just lame.
At one point, Tara looks like she's gonna die because they're hanging off the ledge, then she's like, "Drop me," and then she goes, and you think maybe that might be the end of her, and she gets stabbed in that moment. But then she also like everybody dies, but nobody dies, and it's just like, come on, guys. That goes to one thing that the writers of this and the previous movie, Scream 5, wrote the movie with the blessing of Kevin Williamson. But Kevin Williamson's one note is, this is a slasher film, you have to be comfortable killing your characters. And so, because they weren't comfortable killing their characters, they had you see a lot of death on screen, but it's so artificial because nobody is named. And Scream 5 and 6 are the first 2 movies where unnamed characters are getting killed.
Oh.
Scream 5, it was just the security guard at the hospital. I let that one slide. But this, it's the only people who died are either introduced in this movie or unnamed characters. They should have, and as sad as it would have been, killed Chad or killed Mindy. I definitely would have kept Sam and Tara together because they are what makes this new franchise work. And I'm glad they didn't kill Gale. I think that would have been too cheap. And I like that she outsmarts the killer in her scene. Like, sure, she still gets stabbed, but she's on the phone, and then she starts luring the killer out just by being like, hang tight, and then star 69 and then blasts her through the door.
Yeah.
Like, that's a very Gale thing to do, and I thought that was good. But on the whole, I'm not a huge fan of this one because of it's a good slasher movie, but not really too Scream-like. And I think that this movie, a lot of people like this movie better than the 5th one.
Oh.
Because the 5th one was too much of a retread of the old
that's
one.
The reason. Okay.
And it's like, yeah, it is, but that's the commentary that movie's making about our state of...
point of it.
Yeah, that's the state of movies nowadays, of requels. This movie just, it makes a statement on franchises in that any character is fodder, but it also didn't have the guts to kill somebody. And I think if they make a 7th one, which I hope they do, I think this may have just been a brief misstep, and it could have had like David relations for why it didn't fire on all cylinders and stuff like that. And budgetary constraints of going to a major city, but then having to like test people every day and having masks and stuff because it was still made at a time when it was much more in the public consciousness. Moving a couple years down the line, doing a Scream 7, you could probably have a little more time to flesh out your script.
Yeah, because this one did, I think, better than 5 in the theater, didn't it?
This is the most successful Scream movie.
Right, so I think
beat
it's
the
only-
first movie, which none of the other movies had done.
I think it's only fair to say that we'll see another one, hopefully.
Yeah, the weird thing is they haven't greenlit it yet. And my understanding, the rumors that I've heard about as to why, is the filmmakers of Scream 5 and 6 have signed on to do a Universal Monster movie. It's an unnamed Universal Monster movie.
no.
And then the actress playing Sam is the star of their unnamed Universal Monster movie. But then Jenna Ortega, who plays Tara, has blown up. She's incredibly popular, being part of the TV show You, being part of the TV show Wednesday. She just got cast in Beetlejuice 2, which is apparently finally getting made. Do we need Beetlejuice 2? That's a side tangent. But she's busy making movies.
There you go.
She's a movie star now, so if you get her back, I hope they don't cotton weary her and like take my advice, kill one of the main characters, but not the complex and interesting one. Like, don't do that. But yeah.
Okay, admittedly, I can barely remember anything about this movie, so unfortunately, don't have a whole hell of a lot to say. But I think the strengths of this movie was like the opening scene was really cool, and then like that reveal of holy shit, like for the first time, and him taking it up, because you know you're kind of like, what's going on when he takes off the mask, and the intrigue in that. But for me, after like the opening scene and stuff, so that guy dies. Does he die in the opening scene? Someone kills him.
Yeah.
Ghostface.
The killer says, "Who gives a fuck about movies anyway?" and kills him.
Okay.
And then.
But I mean, for me, like I don't remember the movie being much very interesting after that. Granted, I've only seen it once.
Yeah, I mean, in a bubble, every scene is good. As a slasher film, this is a good, well-made slasher film. As a mystery, it works. It's kind of easy to figure out. But like as a murder mystery, it kind of works. As a connective tissue to the previous movie, it works. The motive of the killer is motivated by the death of the boyfriend beforehand. However, that's the exact same fucking motive from Scream 2. And if Scream 7 introduces like Stu's long-lost child or something like that, or Billy had another illegitimate child...
You're gonna be mad?
Yeah, because that's just Scream 3 again, and I don't want that. Scream was always good because it was a reinvention while becoming its own like set of tropes. Unfortunately, that just comes with the territory. You can't really make a movie to deconstruct a genre while also being part of a genre without making your own sort of tropes. Scream kind of did that. And there were moments in this movie. So I guess my last question for you is, where did you land on bringing back Kirby? Kirby was my favorite character of Scream 4.
Oh, yeah, I remember, because back in the day I had a thing for her.
Yeah.
She looks a little older than she is in this movie, which is weird.
She had a rough life, is
really?
my understanding.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, well that could explain it. But I forgot all about that. Good, thank you for asking that, because that's a big point about this movie. I guess I kind of thought it was, oh god. It's funny because I liked her in 4, but I mean that's because she was.
And it made.
I thought it was just like, oh, give me a break. That's kind of what I thought.
I loved her character in 4, and in this she's essentially
she's like a different character.
She's like a different character, which would happen if you've been
I guess.
killed and left for dead. Yeah, I get it. You're gonna that's mentally gonna change you. But
she was just like generic police
they
woman.
only had her in there to be a suspect. She didn't seem to come into her own character. Now that they've done that, though, if they use her again in a 7th movie as a non-killer or non-potential to be a killer, I think you could get a more resonant storyline out of her. And so if you need some legacy connection, you could let her be it and let Gale have her rest as they gave Sydney. I was fine with how they wrote Sydney out of this.
Yeah, I have no problem with Sydney not being in there, as we discussed in the 5th film. There's really no point to see her pretty much again in the franchise. I felt Kirby back was basically more or less kind of like a, well, you know, I don't know. Let's just bring her back because more or less, and like you say, just for the suspect aspect and for no other reason. Like you say, hopefully if they do 7, they can have a little bit more of, I don't know, her character and more of a reason for her being around.
Yeah, my urge for a 7th movie, if you're watching Radio Silence,
I'm sure they are. Yeah, tell them what to do.
just be comfortable killing the characters that you have. That's the nature of this genre. You have to be willing to do so. And you can do it, and you've demonstrated that you can do it well with killing Dewey. This franchise has done it well by killing Elso. Cotton was another character we cared about. And certainly Randy was another character everybody loved.
Oh.
It hurt when those characters die. So yeah, be willing to kill the characters you have. No more nameless deaths. Like, that's just not, that's just hollow.
You know what would be funny? Hold that thought. If that actress that's really busy and doing all kinds of stuff now, if they got some actress with like the same height, same hair color, and just filmed her from the back and like,
Yeah, I know, right?
Or I guess well, I don't know if you could legally do it without talking to lawyers, but like CG the deep fake face.
That's true. I think if you go back onto my channel, I have a pitch for what Scream 6...
State of Flux.
If you go onto my channel, I had a pitch for what Scream 6 should have been, and it was, in it I talk about the killer cult thing. I said that that's what they should do. You have a person who's behind a keyboard attacking, and the plot should have been, at the end of Scream 5, Gale says, I'm not going to write the book. I'm going to let those fuckers die in anonymity. And that's excellent closure and growth from her character. They buy that back in this movie. And she writes the book, and that's why they're mad at her. That just rung artificial. You could have made this movie better by taking what I originally pitched back then, which is talk about the Snyder cut of it all. How toxic fandom will manipulate the internet into creating a culture around something until it comes to fruition. And they know that there are these murders that happened in Woodsboro that are not being reported. The internet takes these up, saying there was another Ghostface thing here.
Oh, the events of 5.
Of 5. Another Ghostface thing happened, but we're not finding out about it. Release the killer cut so that we can get Stab 8 or Stab 9 or whatever stab that they were making. And then that's where the person behind the keyboard was like, Kirby Reed lives in this address, and that's what I pitched in my story. And so then a person dressed as Ghostface goes to her house and tries to kill her. And then you could tie it in your legacy, not necessarily your legacy characters, just be like, Casey Becker died at this address, and then have a killer kill somebody at Casey's address. You get the same house, but completely different characters.
I think I'm getting it.
And then you could do that. Then you have the detectives try to figure out who this is, and then you could have made a dramatic movie about Gale making the decision of whether or not to just fucking write the book and give in to fan demands for what they want, which is tell the story of how Dewey died, or withhold that and put an end to this nonsense and the toxic cycle of this mean-spirited world where wherever a crime story happens, somebody writes a book about it, and then it inspires another killer to do the exact same thing. It's the meanest-spirited world in any movie franchise I've ever seen, but like, that's a good movie, and this movie could have gone with that. They could have still used that story and had, rather than you killed my son, I want to kill you, you could have had the story of the killer in this being like, you won't tell my son's story, so we're going to do it for you. And
oh my god.
That's the story to tell. You don't walk back Courtney Cox's character advancement at all by telling that story. And you can basically tell the exact same story. as is. So I don't know why they, like, just a finite amount of thought would have fixed that. But whatever.
Whatever. Are we done?
Stars. I give it 3 stars. You heard virtually nothing but complaints. I'm going to talk about the qualities. I liked Jenna Ortega. I like the Chad character. He's Cuba Gooding Jr.'s son. I loved his character. He had much more meat to his character in this one. He was great. I love the continuation of Sam. I liked seeing some of the visual nods to all the Scream 5 movies before it. That was cool. The Ghostface wearing different masks from different characters is very much a legacy sequel kind of thing, as we see with Halloween and all that kind of stuff. So like,
oh god, I forgot all about that. Like all the different masks from the different
like that
crime scenes.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, but just detail things. Yeah.
Details, yeah. The scenes between the characters, when the characters are talking to each other, this has a good scene where Jenna Ortega's character is talking to Gale Weathers and about how she kind of likes Chad, and and Gale's like, pursue that because you live in a dark world. It's important to have some light in it. Dewey was my light and he's gone now, kind of thing. Like, that scene is great. That scene in a lesser movie wouldn't exist, but that in true Scream form is allowed to stay there because it is important for these people to be people. So yeah, there's good scenes throughout. I don't think this movie has any bad scenes. It just has underthought scenes. This is an underbaked movie. It's still 3 stars, but it is the worst of the franchise.
I'll go 2 stars out, and yours is out of 4 stars.
Out of 4.
3 out of 4, and 2 out of 4 for me. Mostly forgettable, as is evidenced by the fact that I can't remember very much of it until he brings something up. Sorry for my sloppy, non-memorable review. It's mostly a Matt review with my with my thoughts, which is absolutely fine. I mean, that was a common thing back in the day when we were doing a lot of stuff. So, admittedly, if I've only seen a movie once and it was weeks ago at that, it's hard for me to remember. But fingers crossed for an improvement with the inevitable Scream 7.
Yeah.
Which it is really weird that seeing as how 6 was the most successful one, it's not happening. But it could be in part due to the actresses' success.
Both actresses, the 2 leads, have extreme success, and now the filmmakers are doing and pursuing their own movie.
So who the hell knows what the future holds for Scream? But admittedly, since we got 2 back to back in 2 years, we probably need a break anyway.
A pause is a good idea, and maybe do like Scream 3, a 3-year pause. I'm fine with that.
Sounds good. If you're done,
I'm done.
I'm done. Hopefully this was. I would imagine this is shorter than the Scream 5 review we shall see. I would imagine it is.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a long-winded motherfucker.
Don't let it happen again. Just kidding. Thanks for being here, Matt, and we'll see you on the next video, which we're going to talk about and decide what the hell it's going to be.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.
Peace.